Stop looking at distance. Start looking at roots. India and Greece are thousands of kilometers apart, but on the new map of power, they are being pulled together by one corridor, one rival, and one question: who controls the road from India to Europe? On February 9, 2026, Greek Defense Minister Nikos Dendias sat across from India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh in New Delhi. Between them lay a joint declaration of intent on defense industrial cooperation and a 2026 military cooperation plan. No BrahMos procurement deal was signed, no contract was inked, no missiles changed hands. That sounds technical. In Ankara, it did not sound technical at all. That direction began in August 2023, when Narendra Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Greece in 40 years. India and Greece upgraded their relationship to a strategic partnership. At the time, it sounded diplomatic. By 2026, it had acquired teeth. When Turkish defense analyst Arden Zenturk warned months later that if Greece acquires India's BrahMos supersonic cruise missile, the entire military balance in the eastern Mediterranean would shift. He was not describing a purchase. He was describing a direction: defense industry, air exercises, ports, supply chains, energy routes, and a corridor that could move Indian trade toward Europe without making Turkey the unavoidable gatekeeper. Then came the missile question: BrahMos. No Greek BrahMos battery exists, but Turkish planners do not need a signed contract to run the map. They look at range rings, islands, naval routes, and reaction time, and what they see is uncomfortable. If Indian missile technology enters the Aegean conversation, Turkey is no longer facing only Greek geography. It is facing Indian technology layered onto Greek geography. This is Modi's Mediterranean checkmate, not a checkmate made by one weapon or one deal. A checkmate made by geography, money, and strategy. Why is a missile designed in India suddenly worrying Turkish planners in the Aegean? BrahMos is not just a missile. It is a symbol that India is no longer only a buyer of defense technology. It is now a seller. A supersonic cruise missile, once the exclusive domain of great powers, can now be exported by a rising middle power. And if Indian military technology reaches the eastern Mediterranean, the map Ankara has relied on for decades no longer reads the same way. The missile flies at Mach 2.8, nearly 3 times the speed of sound. In its terminal phase, it drops to sea-skimming altitude, giving naval defense systems roughly 90 seconds to detect, track, and intercept. 90 seconds. Now place that number inside the Aegean Sea. The Aegean is not an ocean. It is a compressed battle space. Islands sit within sight of each other. Shipping lanes, air corridors, and EEZ claims overlap in a space where distance is measured in seconds, not hours. In this geography, a missile flying at Mach 2.8 does not give a commander time to think. It gives him time to react, or not. This is why the BrahMos question worries Turkish planners more than any weapon system Greece has acquired in 20 years. But the question is not whether a BrahMos battery could be placed on a Greek island. It is which island, and why that choice reveals the real strategic logic. Frontline islands are the wrong place. Placing a high-value missile system on exposed territory within visual range of the Turkish coast would paint a target Ankara could reach before anyone could respond. Any commander who puts his most precious strike asset on his most exposed ground is offering a gift. The real deployment logic runs in the opposite direction. You place BrahMos where it cannot be reached easily, but where it can still reach everything that matters. Islands that sit behind multiple layers of Greek air defense and naval coverage. A BrahMos battery positioned there is shielded by the very compression that makes the Aegean lethal, protected by the front line, while still holding every critical Turkish naval approach within its range ring. It can deny freedom of movement through the waterways Turkey's blue Homeland doctrine claims as its sphere of influence, all from a position Turkish strike assets would have to fight through Greek defenses to reach. This is layered denial. The front line holds, the rear line strikes. Turkey's blue Homeland assumes naval dominance over waters between the Turkish coast and Greek islands. But those assumptions depend on one condition: that Greek islands are defensive obstacles to be isolated. BrahMos transforms them into firing positions, land-based destroyers. And this is not about sinking ships. It is about what the missile forces Turkey to do. A cruise missile with a 290-kilometer range only needs to make Turkish planners assume the risk is real, to push their surface groups further back, to slow their approach, to turn every movement through the Aegean into a calculated gamble. This is anti-access and area denial achieved not with a fleet but with geography. No deal has been signed, no battery has been delivered, but Turkish planners do not need a contract to run the map. They look at range rings, island platforms, defensive layers, and reaction time. And what they see is Indian technology layered onto Greek geography, a combination more potent than either element alone. To understand why India and Greece are getting closer, follow the money. Not the speeches, the money. The India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor was announced at the 2023 G20 summit in New Delhi. Its route runs from Mumbai to the UAE, across Saudi Arabia, through Jordan and Israel, into Greece via Piraeus, before fanning into Europe. It is a freight corridor that deliberately bypasses Turkish territory. At the February 2026 meeting between Mitsotakis and Modi in New Delhi, Greece explicitly restated its willingness to facilitate I-MEC. The language was diplomatic. The strategic geometry was unambiguous. The Atlantic Council, in an August 2025 report, recommended the United States formally join the I-MEC memorandum and continue modernizing the ports of Piraeus and Thessaloniki, adding the phrase particularly relative to Turkey. Western security planners are betting on bypass. I-MEC cuts transit time from Asia to Europe by at least 40% compared to the Suez route. It reduces shipping costs by 30 to 40%. And it carries a geopolitical payload Ankara has been processing with increasing alarm. For 5 centuries since the Ottoman seizure of Constantinople in 1453, Turkey has controlled the primary land bridge between Asia and Europe. This geographic monopoly has been the foundation of Turkish strategic leverage. It is why NATO could never fully sideline Ankara. I-MEC makes the Bosphorus optional. The strategic rent Turkey has extracted from geography for half a millennium begins to evaporate. The most dangerous thing for a corridor power is an alternative route. Mitsotakis personally invited Indian businesses to use Greece as their European gateway. Piraeus is being expanded. Thessaloniki is being modernized, the infrastructure is being laid, and the military architecture of Chapter 1 is the shield protecting this corridor. India cannot invest billions in a trade route Turkish naval power could threaten. The sea lanes approaching Piraeus must be secured. The BrahMos question and the I-MEC corridor are not separate projects. They are the same project viewed from different angles. The missile secures the corridor. Turkey has its own competing vision. The development road would connect Iraq to Turkey and Europe, but Iraq is unstable and Iran influenced. I-MEC runs through the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel, stable, capital-rich states aligned with the Western economic architecture. Private capital is placing bets on bypass, and India's deepening defense relationship with Greece makes that bet harder to call against. The BrahMos missile and the I-MEC corridor converge on a single point: Piraeus. The port that receives Indian goods is the port protected by the capability India is discussing with Greece. The alignment is not accidental, it is architectural. Geography stops being destiny, but only if the diplomatic architecture holds. By the way, only 18% of viewers are subscribed. If this kind of deep dive geopolitics matters to you, like and subscribe. Let's keep revealing what others miss. Every alliance has a shadow. For India and Greece, that shadow is Turkey's relationship with Pakistan. Turkey has repeatedly backed Pakistan on Kashmir, India's most sensitive national security question. And when Turkey strengthens defense ties with Pakistan, India does not issue press releases. It builds counter-architecture. This is mirror diplomacy. Turkey supports Pakistan. India deepens ties with Greece and Cyprus. Turkey raises Kashmir in international forums. India raises Cyprus in territorial integrity. Turkey builds influence with Pakistan and Azerbaijan. India arms Armenia, Greece, and Cyprus. One side moves, the other answers on a different board. The trigger was precise. On April 22, 2025, militants attacked pilgrims in Pahalgam, in Indian-administered Kashmir. India responded with Operation Sindoor between May 7th and May 10th, the most serious military crisis between India and Pakistan in decades. In its aftermath, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan raised Kashmir before the Turkish Parliament's Budget Committee in November 2025, insisting the issue be resolved through international law. For New Delhi, Kashmir is non-negotiable internal territory. Ankara chose a side. It was not India's side. This was the moment the calculus shifted. Before November 2025, India-Turkey tensions were manageable. After, Turkey was identified as an active strategic adversary. The Indian strategic establishment does not respond to provocations with statements. It responds with architecture. In February 2026, India signed the Defense Cooperation Agreement. A week later, Mitsotakis sat down with Modi in New Delhi. The sequence was deliberate. The defense minister laid the hardware. The prime ministers sealed the partnership. India and Cyprus then elevated ties to a strategic partnership, signing a 2026 to 2031 defense cooperation roadmap. Cyprus publicly expressed interest in BrahMos and Nagastra, one kamikaze drones. The map was being redrawn from New Delhi to Nicosia. Then came the visual evidence. In 2024, Greek F-16 flew to India for Tarang Shakti, Greek fighter pilots and Indian Su-30 pilots in formation. The first bilateral India-Greece naval exercise concluded on September 18, 2025 at Salamis Naval Base with maneuvers in the Murtoan Sea. Joint Services staff talks inaugurated in January 2026. Military-to-military relationships built with institutional density that outlasts any single leader. Armenia enters the pattern here. India has sold nearly $2 billion in defense equipment to Armenia since 2020. Akash missiles, Pinnacle rocket launchers, anti-drone systems, artillery. In February 2026, India's Chief of Defense Staff, General Anil Chauhan, spent 4 days in Yerevan. Turkey and Azerbaijan are bound by one nation, two states. If conflict erupts again in Nagorno-Karabakh, Turkey must support Azerbaijan. India is arming Armenia. The alignment is parallel, not formal. No treaty binds India, Greece, and Armenia into a bloc. But three countries, each with grievances against Turkey or its closest allies, each deepening defense ties with one another. Functional architecture. India-Pakistan relations have been frozen since 2019. Turkey chose Pakistan. India chose Greece. These are not separate decisions. They are the same decision made in two capitals, for the same reason, in the same strategic moment. What Ankara does to New Delhi through Islamabad, New Delhi does to Ankara through Athens, Nicosia, and Yerevan. Turkey is not being surrounded by armies, it is being surrounded by networks. Not a military pincer in the old sense. Divisions on two fronts, a classic envelopment, a network pincer. Trade corridors that reroute around Turkish territory. Defense partnerships that arm Turkey's neighbors with technology Ankara cannot match. Diplomatic alignments that isolate Turkish positions in international forums. Each layer operates independently. Together, they form architecture. The India-Greece axis is the clearest expression of this, but not the only one. Consider what is actually happening. India, a non-NATO nuclear power and U.S. major defense partner, is discussing weapons transfers to a NATO member, Greece, that would be used to deter another NATO member, Turkey. And Washington is not objecting. This defies every Cold War category. It is post-NATO security. Alliances defined not by treaty membership, but by strategic alignment in a world where the American guarantee is no longer absolute. The trade network is already operational. I-MEC reroutes Asian-European freight around the Bosphorus. The defense network is deepening. The diplomatic network is locking. And Ankara is watching all three converge on a single geography, the Eastern Mediterranean. Greece is no longer a passive beneficiary of larger powers' decisions. It has become the pivot point of an intercontinental alignment, European gateway for an ocean to Mediterranean trade corridor, potential forward base for a missile capability no NATO ally has fielded, diplomatic bridge between the world's largest democracy and the European Union's southeastern flank. These are not separate roles. They are the same role viewed through different lenses, and they all depend on a single condition, that the architecture continues to tighten. The India-Armenia relationship adds the eastern jaw of the Pincer. Akash missiles capable of intercepting Azerbaijani drones, Pincer rocket systems, General Chauhan's visit to Yerevan. If conflict reignites in Nagorno-Karabakh, Turkey must support Azerbaijan. India is arming Armenia. The alignment is not a treaty. It is functional. This is what a network pincer looks like. No single element is decisive. Together, they force Ankara to make choices it never had to make before. Which front to prioritize, which relationship to repair, which assumption to abandon. Turkey's response has been revealing. Diplomatic overtures to New Delhi, statements about resolving differences through dialogue, damage control signals from a capital that does not typically send them. Ankara has recognized that its Pakistan policy, its Cyprus position, and its blue Homeland doctrine are no longer cost-free. The costs are being priced into the architecture now surrounding it on multiple vectors. The India-Greece axis is not an alliance in the 20th century sense. There is no mutual defense clause, no integrated command structure, no binding treaty. It is something more flexible and, in the long run, more durable. An alignment of interests hardened by shared adversaries and converging in a single geography at a single strategic moment. Turkey's biggest problem is no longer one enemy. It is the map itself. Trade flows around it. Defense partnerships encircle it. Diplomatic networks isolate it. And the countries building this architecture are not going away. They are multiplying. The India-Greece axis is not a treaty. It is a wager. The wager is that geography can be reshaped by technology, and that a trade corridor guarded by a missile no NATO ally fields is more durable than a pact no one intends to enforce. Turkey spent 5 centuries as the indispensable route between continents. That era is not over. But it is now contested, not by one enemy, but by a network of states, corridors, and capabilities that none of its adversaries could assemble alone. India brings the missile, Greece brings the geography, Armenia, Cyprus, Israel, and the UAE bring their own grievances, their own ambitions, their own money. The architecture does not depend on any single relationship surviving. It depends on every relationship pointing in the same direction. And they do. Ankara is not facing a crisis, it is facing a convergence. Trade flows reroute, defense partnerships encircle, diplomatic alignments isolate. None of this was planned by a single capital. All of it is real. The checkmate is not a BrahMos battery on an Aegean island. It is the moment Turkish planners look at the map and realize there is no longer one problem to solve. There is only the map itself. Today's sponsor is you. If you want more deep dives into the power struggles reshaping the Eastern Mediterranean, the hidden corridors, the strategic weapons, and the rivalries the headlines are missing, join Money Trail as a member. Your support directly funds the deep-tier research, the custom mapping, and the geopolitical analysis that makes this level of transparency possible. By joining, you aren't just watching the map being redrawn. You're the one helping us chart it. The videos on your screen right now aren't here by accident. They are the next pieces of the puzzle. Click one, and let's keep following the trail.